The bubble stuff was actually probably the biggest immediate headline from the selection show because North Carolina got in when nobody thought they were getting in, and West Virginia got left out when nobody thought they were getting left out. And late last night, I was on the Eye on College Basketball podcast with Matt Norlander, and he made the point that he doesn't even mind. Like, I want to be clear, I don't want to misquote him. He thinks West Virginia should be in and North Carolina should be out, like the rest of the world, other than the selection committee. But he was like, I don't mind that the committee's not beholden to bracketmatrix.com, which is a website where they take like more than 100 brackets and they document them, and you can sort of see, like if you're a Memphis fan and you want to see what not just Jerry Palm and Joe Lunardi think about you, but every television bracketologist, plus just people who do it on the side as a hobby. Like if you want to see what the world thinks about you from a bracketing perspective, you go to bracketmatrix.com and you can see more than 100 different seeds attached to your name. And Norlander's point was, I'm sort of glad that the committee doesn't just look at that and say, well, if Bracket Matrix, every one of these brackets says West Virginia's got to be in, I guess we got to put them in. And I understood the point he was making, but I actually think that's crazy. I think if you look at something and there's 100 people saying they disagree with you, like everybody is saying they disagree with you, that should make you reconsider your position. Am I wrong about that? Like,
no.
I think there are certain people I respect in the opinion-giving business, and at the very least, if I come to a realization that my opinion that I formed on my own runs completely counter to theirs on whatever topic, I at least go back and think about it some more. Because I'm like, I usually agree with this person, and I don't agree with them on this. So is that a them problem or a me problem? Let me look at it again. I do that all the time. If there's 50 people out there that I don't respect, that I don't, then I won't even blink. That doesn't matter to me. But if there's somebody out there who I respect and that I usually agree with, and suddenly I find myself disagreeing with them, I look at myself before I look at them, because I want to see if maybe there's something I'm missing. And I think the committee should do that. You can reach independently the conclusion that West Virginia doesn't belong in this tournament. But if everybody who is doing a bracket out there in the world thinks that they should be in, I think you got to go back and look at that and wonder, are we missing something here? Because I think they missed something here. You can justify putting North Carolina in based on the way that they did it. And I made this point last night on television. There's so much data points available to the committee now, results-based metrics, predictive metrics, quad 1 stuff, quad 2 stuff, strength of schedule, non-league strength of schedule. You can sort of emphasize whatever you want to emphasize to support whatever case you want to make. Like if I wanted to make Gonzaga a 3 seed, I could just point to the predictive metrics and say, look at their net, look at their KenPom. You got to respect what it is these predictive metrics say they are. And if I wanted to make Gonzaga 8 seed, I would just look at the results-based stuff and say, look at their quadrant 1, quadrant 2. They don't have big signature wins. Hey, it's not my fault, but you got to win some big games to get seeded, as a top 3. I could take from the sheets, the team sheets, as they say, emphasize whatever I want to emphasize and make it sound smart. And that's what they did with North Carolina. They de-emphasized the 1-12 record in quadrant 1, which in my mind is the most important thing. What is the NCAA tournament? It is a tournament designed to crown a champion. How do you get to be the champion? At some point, you got to start beating good teams. To me, that is question number 1 about whether you belong in the NCAA tournament. Did you show the ability to beat good teams? That's what you're asked to do once you get in this bracket, for the most part. Yeah. You're going to need to beat good teams. Have you shown – we've been playing for more than 4 months. Have you shown the ability to beat good teams? North Carolina hadn't. They're 1-12 in quadrant 1, and the one win was a victory over UCLA here in New York. I was there at the Garden, and they stole that game. Like they were behind the whole game. It was a weird victory. They played 13 quadrant 1 games and they lost 12 of them. That's all I need to know. Like once I can cite that as a fact, I don't need you in this tournament. But the committee looked at North Carolina and they said, yeah, but no losses outside of quadrant 1. So yeah, they lost to a lot of good teams, great teams, but they didn't lose to any bad teams. Well, congratulations on your losses. You're bragging about your losses. You're North Carolina basketball bragging about your losses. That seems weird to me. Michael Jordan wore your uniform, and you're bragging about the quality of your losses. I liked it better when you guys bragged about wins. And then they emphasized quadrant 2. You know, they're 8-0 in quadrant 2. I never heard anybody. We do the Eye on College Basketball podcast 3 times a week all season. We never emphasize quadrant 2. Suddenly there's the committee co-chair, vice chair, emphasizing North Carolina's quadrant 2 record. Well, they're 8-0 in quadrant 2. Okay, but why is that more relevant than their 1-12 in quadrant 1? That 8-0 in quadrant 2, like, okay. But when they played the best teams in the country, they lost almost without exception. That should be more important than when they played mediocre teams, they beat them every time. They emphasized what they wanted to emphasize. That's how you get North Carolina in. With West Virginia, they just stepped on it. They just messed this up. I don't know if you heard the explanation, but among the reasons they explained that they kept West Virginia out of the bracket is because of an injury to Tucker DeVries.
Oh, that's such BS. I saw that.
He's been hurt since December 6th. Like, yeah, some of their good wins came with him in the lineup, but most of their good wins came without him. It's one thing when you get hurt this weekend, although maybe it's not, because I'll hammer this point home in a second. And they can wonder, well, you know, we don't know what this team is going to look like without this injured star player. The most famous examples, Cincinnati in 2000, Kenyon Martin breaks his leg in the pyramid during that conference tournament. And the committee made Cincinnati a 2 seed, even though clearly it had the resume of a 1 seed. And their explanation was, well, we now know Kenyon Martin isn't going to be available, and we just don't think they're the same team without Kenyon Martin. And nobody really argued because it made sense that they wouldn't be the same team without Kenyon Martin. And there was nothing to support a counter argument. We had not seen them be great without Kenyon Martin. West Virginia's been playing without this dude, who isn't even their best player, by the way. They've been playing without this dude since December 6th. They've won quadrant 1 game. They've won more quadrant 1 games without Tucker DeVries than North Carolina won with its entire roster. All right, the roster of North Carolina's taken into the NCAA tournament didn't win as many quadrant 1 games as West Virginia won without Tucker DeVries. So why are you punishing West Virginia for a player who's been out for more than 3 months? It makes no sense. They showed you what they are without him, and what they are without him is a team that's good enough to be in the NCAA tournament. But you know what? They said he's important to them back in November, so we think that that should be considered in the selection process. All right, fine. But then tell me how Memphis got a 5 seed when one of its best players is in a boot, and we really don't have a good idea of what they're going to be without him. Like, it was common knowledge yesterday that Tyrese Hunter is in a boot, on crutches, and unlikely to play in this NCAA tournament. I'm not arguing that Memphis shouldn't have been given a 5. I'm glad that Memphis was. I want good things for Memphis. But how can you keep West Virginia out of the bracket because of a player who may or may not even be as important to West Virginia as Tyrese Hunter is to Memphis? How can you keep West Virginia out of a bracket, point to a player who hasn't played since December 6th, but then, in some people's mind, overseed Memphis, even though Memphis is one of its best players is probably not going to be able to play basketball anytime soon? How do you? There is no way you could answer that question if you were on that committee sensibly. Oh, and by the way, Duke's best player also has missed the past 2 games. Duke's best player, they say they would like for him to play on Friday, but you don't know if he can. That didn't hurt Duke at all when it came to the seeding process. Duke losing perhaps the best player in the country didn't hurt Duke at all. But West Virginia losing a top 3 player on its team more than 3 months ago cost West Virginia? What?
It doesn't make sense. And then, dude, you look at like because I saw your old friend Ren Baker, he's the AD there, right? At West Virginia. Dude, he put out he was putting out some numbers because obviously, I mean, they're obviously mad. But there's 6 quad 1 wins. 5 of them are on the road. Like, they got a good resume.
They have 6 times as many quadrant 1 wins as North Carolina, and some of those came without Tucker DeVries. You could have just pointed to West Virginia's wins above bubble, strength of record. There were things to point to where you could reasonably make a case against West Virginia if you were just committed to making that case. I would have still disagreed with you and said I think they should have been, especially over North Carolina. To me, that's where the conversation stops and starts. It's about North Carolina, West Virginia. If you're picking between those two teams, it should not. One team accomplished some stuff this season, and another team never did. To me, it's easy between them. But if you wanted to make a case against West Virginia, there are numbers to point to. But pointing to Tucker DeVries is just nonsensical. That made no sense. That's where if your goal as a committee chair or committee vice chair was to come out of your interviews on Sunday without looking stupid, you blew it when you started talking about West Virginia, because your explanation makes no sense whatsoever to people who have followed the sport even a little bit.
The Gary Parrish Show, live weekdays at 10 a.m.